right, today we're going to talk about the bench saw or the table saw. You're going to hear me call it the table saw. So typically, you're going to do all of the ripping on this saw. A couple safety things. First off, you want to make sure that your floor is clear, that your bench is clear, nothing on the bench that you're going to be pushing your stuff into. You want to make sure you have no loose clothing, so take your stuff and tuck it in. If you're out leaning over this and you get your ID badge, your hair, whatever, down into this blade, it's going to suck you into the blade. This is a pretty powerful saw. Yeah, the safety things, the floor and the scraps on the table are really important, so be aware of that. The floor gets messy and there's a lot of sawdust on it. This is borderline where we're at now. It can get slippery, and when you're reaching out across here, you can slip and fall into the blade. Just all of those housekeeping rules that we've already talked about. So the first thing you want to do when you come up here is you want to set the saw blade height. Now, I don't know if you guys remember from your reading, but that saw blade needs to be above the material between 1/4 and 1/2 inch. If you don't know what that is, typically that's the thickness of that saw tooth on that blade. So you use the lever on the front of the saw to raise and lower the blade. So you want to get that so it's just 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch above your material. The reason you don't want that extra above that material, I got to only cut that piece with an extra 2 inches above that material, that's just more blade exposed with the possibility of me getting hurt. So you want to make sure that that's down, as I said, 1/4 to 1/2 inch above the material. Make sure that your guard comes back in place and is working properly. Never run this saw without the guard. I see a lot of guys will come up here and put their mark on the piece that they want cut. You don't need to put any marks on your piece. All you need to know is how wide you're going to rip it. The gauge on the side of here will be accurate and be exactly where you need it to be. Okay? Always make sure that your fence is locked in place so that it doesn't move on you. Once you get your size, I'm going to go over a couple other things here first. So if your piece that you're cutting is less than the groove here or less than 4 inches on the saw, you must use a push stick. Okay? So if my fence is inside of that groove and I can't see that groove, you got to use the push stick. You're going to use the push stick on the edge of your material. Just for demonstration, I'm going to show you what to do here without the saw running. So when I use my push stick, I don't want to push my push stick all the way over here on this board. Okay? I don't know if you can see that in the camera, but never put your push stick all the way over on the board. You want it to be in the middle or towards the edge, towards the saw blade. And the reason for that, if I take and push on this piece over here by where the fence would be, what direction does that go? It goes away from my fence. When I push on it on this side, it goes towards my fence, okay? The key to ripping this and keeping it straight is this straight edge on the fence right there has to stay on that fence. If it comes off the fence, you got a chance of it binding and you got a chance of it kicking back. When I say kick back, I have seen material fly from here to our garage door down there. Whole sheets of plywood. So this saw's got a lot of power, and if it binds, it can hurt you really bad. So make sure that you're on the fence, you keep it along the fence, use the push stick if it gets within that 4-inch mark. If it's outside the 4-inch mark, it's not necessary to use the push stick, but I'd like for you to, if you're using your hand to push it through, put your thumb down into this groove to push it through and clip your finger up on the edge of this fence. If you've got your hand down here and pushing through, you got a chance for your hand moving around. You got your finger on the edge of that fence, you always got a guide that kind of guides you through. But again, remember, don't use the push stick or don't use your hand if it's less than 4 inches, use the push stick. So I've got my blade set, I've got my size set. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pay attention to the people in my area. Absolutely do not want somebody directly behind me, because if it gets bound and kicks out, it'll go directly behind. I never want to stand directly behind the piece. I want to stand slightly to the left of my piece, and I want to push it through, holding my hand on the side of the piece, and this hand never moves. Okay, my left hand on here never moves. The only one that moves is this right hand pushing it up to the edge of the table. If I'm using a small piece, then I need to use the push stick. My left hand's holding it against the fence. I get it to the edge with my right hand. I stop, hold it with my left hand, pick up my push stick, and push it the remainder of the way through. Okay? Never let this left hand go towards that blade. Never let your right hand go towards that blade. You always want that push stick doing that work within that 4-inch range. If I'm doing it on this side, as I already said, you want to make sure that your hand doesn't go past that groove, that 4-inch groove. Actually, that groove is for the miter gauge for cross cutting. We'll talk about that in a moment. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and set this at 10 inches. Make my first cut, set my area, hold my hand on the side right here on the left hand side. I'm offset slightly, stop it right at the edge. Now I can either choose to grab my push stick or I can use my hand to push it in, but I'm going to use my thumb right in that groove and push it all the way through. I want to push it all the way clear of the blade, and then I want to use my leg and hit the off button. You don't even have to look down here to see that, to shut it off. All you got to do is bump your leg against that big old red button and it'll shut right off. If I get pieces that get stuck down in that blade, I want to, in your writing that you did today, it said to shut it off. I want you to not only shut it off, I want you to power it off. And the way you do that, if you've got pieces stuck in there, you take this little yellow thing and take it out. Set it right there, it's magnetized. You see the light? You can't turn it on now, okay? in the event that you're working on this and you've got all that stuff still available, somebody comes walking by here and bumps that switch, like crazy things happen, and you're down in here working, trying to get some stuff out of that blade, you're in trouble. You're gonna get hurt. You're gonna lose fingers, or even worse. Okay? Once you're ready, once you got it cleared, then you put that magnet back in there and you're ready to go again. You got a question? No question? Don't talk up, I can't hear you. You all will do this. So you can also, you will rip cut on here, but you have the option to cross cut as well. Can you hand me that piece? To cross cut, you're going to use the miter gauge. You're going to put that in this groove, and you use it with your mark on here to cut this on the miter gauge. Because we have so many other saws in here, the miter saw that you already took a test on I don't want you using this unless you come and check with me. The miter gauge is not something you need to do on the table saw. You're going to use that on the miter saw. So it's just a little bit safer for you than doing this side. So that concludes the safety on it. We'll do the exam here shortly, but now you guys are all going to get a chance to run this.